Welcome to Paranormal Latte Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. Sit back and relax with us. Grab yourself a really good drink. Spend an hour and let's delve into a world of chatter about the mysteries of the unexplained. Whether you are a skeptic or a believer makes no difference. It's not always in your imagination. Enjoy your day. Now that was good. Now that was good. Good evening, everyone, and thanks again for joining me for yet another episode of Paranormal Latte Podcast. My name is Dr. Kelly Renee Schutz. I am the host and the producer of this show. Today we're going to be speaking with Jason McGray. He's quite an experienced individual, quite a storyteller also, and is the owner of many haunted objects. We had just gone everywhere in our conversation, but I think you're going to find him to be rather intriguing. But before we get into that interview, why don't we take just a moment here to learn just a little bit more about my special guest today, Jason McGray. My guest this evening is Jason McGray. Jason has been a paranormal explorer for over 25 years. He currently lives in a small town by the name of Whitby, Ontario, with his fiancée as well as their dog, Beckett. When he is not working his regular job, he can be found diving into all forms of high strangeness. He is also an author, and he has 2 books out, one which is just about to launch, but the first one is Stories from Beyond the Unknown and Exploring the Unknown, both books which can be found on Amazon. He can also be found on Facebook, Instagram, and also YouTube under Elements of the Unknown. Jason and I had a very interesting conversation this evening, so sit back and enjoy as we go head on head with some very, very interesting topics. Please welcome to the show, Jason McGray. Well, good evening, Jason, and thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, well, this is going to be an exciting show because we've got not only just a lot to talk about, but Jason has a book and another one actually coming out fairly soon, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment too. So, all right, Jason, so how I usually start these things, foundation question, of course, go back to the earliest time you can remember, and we'll evolve it from there. Talk to us a little bit about if you had an interest in the paranormal or anything otherworldly, and we'll just take it from there.
Absolutely. And I can remember back quite a bit far, and you can read about it as well in the first book that I made, Stories from Beyond the Unknown. It encases a lot of the stories of my early memories, and then I deep dive on it on the second book coming out. So the first experience I can remember, I don't even know how young I was. I must have been around 5 or 6. Mm-hmm. My mother was a hairdresser by trade, and so in her off days, she would go to friends' houses and cut their hair and stuff. And I would sit in the living room and they'd leave me with a snack and watch the TV as the babysitter. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in this room and there was this object dancing on the wall, this shadow. It's dancing. And it had like these arms with some clawed hands, but it didn't have any legs. Its body just went into a tail. And the head was silhouetted with a couple little stubby horns on the top.
Oh, God.
And it danced on the wall. And I remember being freaked out and calling for my mother. And she came into the room and her friend came into the room and they saw this on the wall as well. And they tried to do what every person tries to do, is explain what it was. Mm-hmm. Because they didn't want small child Jason to be afraid. So they started moving the lamp. They started moving all kinds of stuff in the room and they couldn't get it. They couldn't figure out what it was causing the shadow. And eventually they said, well, it's got to be a shadow of something with light or something. And they went back to the dining room area that they were in cutting hair. And this being or energy or whatever it was was on the wall for another few minutes, and then it just kind of trailed off and went away. And it stuck in my head for a very long time. I remember being scared about what that was and as I got older, trying to understand what that first image was. Was it a ghost? And then it turns into, was it a demon? And then you get more educated on the high strangeness of the world, and then you think maybe it was some kind of guardian over me, or maybe some kind of spirit guide, or all these theories I had, and I still never really have an answer as to what it was, but lots and lots of theories about what it could be. All I know is it wasn't a shadow from any object in the room. And that's my earliest memory of anything paranormal.
That's actually quite creepy. I mean, I know that I used to have dreams with a demon showing up in it, red face, horns, laughing at me all the time. Hated that, bothered me a lot, but that was a visual in my dreams. Don't know where that came from. But when you see something like that on the wall, did it have red eyes, or did it have anything glowing from it at all?
It was just a silhouette. There was no features. I couldn't see anything but the silhouette. Almost to the point where like I could draw it like a cartoon character, almost like a silhouette. And that's the only time I had ever seen it. I've never seen that image or that likeness ever again.
And you never saw it again. Okay, geez. You wonder sometimes what may have... I always like to refer to what were the elements that day. Clear sky, lots of energy, northern lights, all these types of things. A tornado, bad windstorm, electrical, that type of thing, rainstorm. Nothing going on outside per se that could have manifested or lifted that energy up to a certain degree. Not really.
The thing is that I was so young that my memory of, I can't even tell you if I was in a house or an apartment building. I don't know what time of the year it was or anything like that. Because being so young and you don't retain a lot of memories from when you were a certain young age.
Right.
I think the human body doesn't even mostly remember anything beyond 3 and younger. We don't retain a memory. But I just have that image of, I don't even remember what I was watching on TV. I don't remember what I was snacking on. I don't even know what friend my mother was visiting.
Well, and just the idea that they saw it too, though. I Correct. Mean, they saw it as well.
Because what's interesting is years later when I wrote about this in the first book and my mother read the book, she doesn't have a memory now of this happening, which is very unusual for me. That she wouldn't have a memory of it, because it makes it more confusing for me. Because then you start to question, did I actually see something, or did I make that up in my mind when I was a kid? But I'm more than positive that I experienced that. But it wasn't until my early teens, when I had my second experience, that really, really pushed my interest into the paranormal. That was what kicked off my interest. And we had moved into a house that was really old. And within the first few weeks, I woke up in the middle of the night and there was a man standing in the doorway to my bedroom. And he was not in current day clothing. He was more period clothing to like the 1800s area. And he was just standing there, and I didn't know who it was or why he was there. And we were in a new house, so it was unfamiliar territory to me. And then he kind of walked away and went around a corner, and I think I was like 12, maybe 13. And I remember yelling out for my mom to come, and she came, and I told her what I saw. And she tried to get me to go back to sleep, but I mean, when she went to bed, I just stayed sitting on my bed in my room until morning came, and then I had to go to school. And I stayed in that house. I grew up in that house, so there was a lot of experiences in that house. I've written about a lot of experiences there, but that propelled me into researching, and ended up learning some of my friends are into the same things, and it pushed me towards the path that I'm on now. It was the very beginning of the path.
Yeah, I can relate to that 100%. I want to go back a moment and ask, were you in an area, did you ever research that area to find out if there was any type of, I mean, I refer to it as a civil war, but like any type of war activity going on in that area that would have potentially affected the house that you lived in?
So the area that I lived in is in the centralized downtown area of Oshawa, Ontario. And Oshawa, Ontario, if you go far back enough, was called Little Bear, and beside it was Big Bear, which is now Whitby, Ontario, which is where I live. And Oshawa was almost like a trading route in the early days. So the Irish would come up the St. Lawrence River and into Lake Ontario, and Oshawa was a stopping point, and the natives would come down the river and do trades with them at the mouth of the lake. So Oshawa was built around this trading area, and the land is very native. And as it built up, there was lots of different religions. We had Quakers and Catholics and Christians and all kinds of things. And the town built itself up, and where my house was across the street is the military barracks to the town.
Okay.
So, and that military barracks still stands there to this day, and the house I lived in is still there to this day as well. It's been highly renovated, and I wonder sometimes when they were renovating how much they kicked up as well.
Yeah, they don't like that. I don't know. It just seems like I've never heard of a story yet, maybe one, where something was not happy with renovations. You're changing something they recognize or they interacted with or were part of, and they just hate that for some reason, and then they start acting up. I've heard all kinds of stories. That's interesting that your house still exists and that incident may have occurred. I wonder if that military person, of course, yet, back then they take such an oath to protect that you wonder if that embeds itself in its energy at, even at death, to the point where they're still thinking that they're doing their job of protecting, whatever they're in front of and stuff like that, or trying to do. That's very interesting. But do you remember when the person looked at you, what kind of expression I presume it was had on his face?
He was puzzled. It was very, very much so like, what are you doing in my house? And that kind of got confirmed to me many years later when I spoke to a friend of mine who runs a paranormal store close to town here. And she is a medium as well. And she said, we were gonna have a discussion about going back and researching my own history and stuff with the paranormal, and I was telling her the story about this spirit, and she said, I have the feeling that this is somebody that used to live in the house, and they were wondering, what are you doing in my house?
Interesting.
And I remember saying out loud as well, because I was scared out of my mind.
Yeah.
I don't care that you're here. I don't want to see you. And I never saw the person again. But activity 100% happened in that house all the time.
Interesting.
But I never saw him again.
Interesting. Yeah. I think it's creepier when you can't see it. But then if you did see it and you saw what you're looking at, it's probably better that you don't see it. I mean, it just all depends, because I just had this very conversation with somebody, a guest a few days ago, and had said, yeah, it's the creepiness of not knowing what you're dealing with. And if all of a sudden you realized, I don't know, I think it'd creep people out more. Tell us a little bit about some of the additional activity that went on in your house with potentially that individual.
That house, so years after I got through high school and college, my parents decided they were going to move. And at that time, I thought it's a good opportunity for me to kind of leave the proverbial home and go my own way. So we had actually made arrangements. My parents were going to move, and I was going to stay in the house. So my parents were renters, so they rented the house. They moved on, rented somewhere else, made arrangements with the landlord, and I stayed in the house, and I had moved in a couple friends. So I'm freshly out of college. You know how it is. You live with live with your friends and stuff. You're finding your way. And that's when activity really started to kick up. I would tell them a story, and then next thing we knew, things were happening in the house. So we would go into the basement where we had set up a rec room where we would go and sit and relax and watch movies on TV and do all the things that late teens, early 20-year-olds do. And I remember one of the TVs coming on, and it was all static. And I was like, that's weird. And everybody's like, why is that weird? Because you don't have cable hooked up? I said, no, because the TV's not plugged in. So that freaked him out a little bit. We had objects, obviously, in the house would move from here and there, like salt and pepper shaker move, or a can on the table would push over to the side and stuff. And so we had one friend, he was like, there's got to be an explanation to it. I don't believe that it's ghosts. And I said, okay, well, let's take this coin, this quarter, and we're going to go to the front room, and we're going to put it on the floor, heads up, and we're all going to leave the room and close the door. And I said, we used to call the ghost at this point, we just called him George. And I said, George, if you're around, can you flip the quarter? And so we went back after 15, 20 minutes. The quarter's not flipped, and he's going, you see, I told you, there's no such thing, and blah, blah, blah. So we end up going out for the night. We're going to the pub or whatever we're going, and we're gone for hours, and nobody's in the house. And we came back, and that one friend went into the room, and he come out freaking out. He said, did you go in that room when you came back? And I said, no. He goes, well, that quarter's been flipped. And I said, see, I told you. Now there was nobody here to tamper with it, and it's been flipped. So there was a lot of small things like that happened, but nobody really saw George ever again. I'm sure he's there, though, making his presence known.
Okay, so after that point, did you have many more occurrences after the coin flipping point, or did that just kind of like the friends of yours, were they living there with you, or did they just come over to hang out?
No, they were living there with me.
Oh, they were.
What that did was kickstart an interest in finding out other local haunts. So we would go to the local hot spots. We would look online and see what the local lores were, and it was very early times. We're talking turn of the century, like 1999, 2000. So using internet searches was just like you're searching web pages to see what people have put up, but there's no Facebook, there's no chats, or cell phones weren't barely even a thing. So it was a lot of research to try to find out what in our small little local area was haunted. And we found some legends, and then we would go explore them and then come back home and talk about them and then go back out the next night. And we kept exploring and trying to have experiences. And I write about a lot of those experiences. They're an early part of my journey. And a lot of freaky things happened to me in my journey. We've been on a road called Ghost Road, where a ghost motorcycle comes down the road and disappears right before your car and then reappears behind your car. And it's a legend of a ghost that had ridden his motorcycle across the field and went through a fence and hit his head on a rock and died. That's the legend. And we've been to the middle of the woods in an area that's now developed, but it wasn't before, and heard a little girl singing and dancing at 3 a.m. And that to me, that unseen, but you hear the voice of a small child, that was scary to me completely when I was younger. A lot of those things I ran from now, I run towards now.
Yeah.
That's what happens.
Sounds like what I did, back in the day. Now I just sit idle, and they just all come to me when they feel like it. Because I don't really have to go searching for it. For some reason, I'm sure, and I'm going to ask you this question in just a second here. I have been able to trace my roots of beaconess all the way back to age 3. And yes, there are possibilities, because I've talked to people that do remember some memories before age 3. They're very sparse, and they're very selective too. Just like when I was age 2, 3, there's very selective, but it's kind of sketchy, right? Why some things stick and why some things don't, I don't know what the impact was, or if it was traumatic or something just startling at the time, and it just went right into our system and stayed there. So I'm a beacon, and I want to ask you the same question. Do you have any psi abilities, or does your family know that you know of that have had incidences like this, either before you were born, your grandparents, your parents, anything that may explain why you seem to have some beaconess abilities yourself?
I honestly don't have any kind of clairs or psi abilities or anything like that. I've never tried to tap into having any kind of ability or try to pursue it, and I've never claimed to say I see anything or hear anything or perceive anything. I've never tried it. It's always just been my curiosity of what I'm experiencing. And my family history, my family was very Christian growing up. So it was a lot of Sunday school,
Yeah.
and a lot of Christianity, and my grandmother telling me that, Jesus and God have a plan, and I don't ever understand it. And it was a very Christian home that I grew up in. So much so that when I started learning about things like Wicca, and witchcraft, that I hid that I was learning about that stuff because I didn't want to get in trouble for even learning about it. And none of my family really had any abilities or anything. The closest thing to any kind of relevance maybe was my grandmother was a Halloween baby. So she dressed up as a witch every year for Halloween, which I always thought was funny for her being a Christian. She dressed up almost like the image of like the Wicked Witch from Wizard of Oz, and but that was it. And my fascination with Halloween has always been year round and my favorite time of year. And there's never, to my knowledge, I've asked my dad, and my dad's just more of a military background where he's enjoyed the military, but there's never really been a spookiness or an eerie or an unexplained or high strangeness with my family. I think I'm blazing the trail unless it goes back further than my immediate roots. I don't know that there's anything else there.
Interesting. Do you think there's a connection at all with your dad having a military background and that soldier showing up in the doorway in your room?
It's very possible. There's a lot of military on both sides. My grandfather was in the military as well. And for a period of time, I had a fascination with being in the military. So I think my energy and my bloodline and his family history has a connection to a militarized family. My grandfather served in World War II. I still have, I have his medals and his discharge records and stuff like that. I have a bayonet of his that I remember when I was younger asking my grandmother, what should I use to clean the blade? And she said, don't you ever clean that blade. That's got German blood on it.
Oh,
so I thought it was rust. But now, no, looking in hindsight, I have this object in my house with that on it. And that could be an object that is causing activity as well. And very possibly that bayonet was in the house that I lived in where I had that experience. So you never know. There may be a connection there that I never even thought about until just now. The military motif and synchronicity has always been there.
I'm going to jump in with a short story to connect this a little bit. Maybe connect it a little bit, not a lot of it. So I have this harmonica that I just acquired this past summer at a World War II museum in the Netherlands, Arnhem, Netherlands, where the opposition was the Nazis, were the opposition. They're trying to keep them out of there. They have thousands and thousands of artifacts. They went and acquired from a store several miles down the road. I thought somewhere in Germany. The store was going out of business, some kind of a museum. and the artifacts that they had were World War II Nazi opposition artifacts. Why he would decide to bring that into his store, which was also of course the opposite side fighting against them, I do not know that answer to this day. I never thought about that until now, but they had a small gift shop, and I became incredibly mesmerized by this harmonica. And I talked just briefly with Jason prior to the show a little bit about this haunted harmonica. Well, the harmonica came from the opposition, from the Nazi side, which my husband said, do not buy that harmonica. Do not. And I said, I don't know. I can't explain it. It wants me to buy it. Now, buying that harmonica, I was just mesmerized with it. I don't know why. And joked about it, hoping that our plane wouldn't crash coming back to the Americas, United States. And anyway, long story short, some things started happening in our house, and I was filmed in a movie with it, which it absolutely went completely nuts. Like the energy was overwhelming to the point of no return. It was, I broke down crying in the movie, which the trauma was because I almost got run over by a personless car in Brussels. Okay, and many of you have heard that story. Some of you have read it on my Facebook page. I posted the pictures, but there's an interesting twist to all of this. Just in addition to something wanting to run me over, after buying that harmonica the day before. Don't know if it was my husband's uncle, who also, by the way, fought in World War II against the opposition, buried over in, I can't remember, I think it's Belgium that he's buried over in. The Henry Chappelle American Cemetery is where he's buried. And not only had an experience at his tombstone, I electrified, I completely sizzled when I touched the tombstone. We don't know to this day if it was him who protected me and my husband from being run over by that car. We don't know if it was something on the harmonica that attached to me that protected me. We don't know if it was a guardian angel. We don't know. But I can tell you in a shorter story here that a couple months afterwards, as weird as this sounds, when I was touching the tombstone and saying goodbye, I'm so sorry you have to be here, and family's back in the States, and they're all deceased now, but a person we don't know, and I had said to him, I wish I knew how you died. I wish I knew if this was the first place you're buried. I wish I knew if you're right here. Someone that never heard these questions ever contacted my husband a couple months later from Kansas. We don't know who this person is. We never talked about this. Didn't talk about it with anyone. Sent him a folder with the uncle's information, how he died, where he was buried, what he died with, this and that, what the father received. Every question I asked was answered in this folder from this person, and it all stemmed from our visit to the harmonica, to this, to that, to something protecting us, and the whole 10 yards. Anyway, I'm going to shut up now because this is all about you, not me. But I
love that. I love it. I love the synchronicities of it.
Well, but I had to throw it in here because when you brought up there's German blood on that bayonet, what do you think I was holding in my hands? It wasn't the Americans. It was literally from the Nazi side that had this harmonica and played it, and the energy was just wow. It doesn't like to be touched, by the way, so I leave it alone. I show the picture, tell the story, but the thing is it's very active. Have you felt any kind of an energy around that bayonet since you literally have it in your place?
No, it's the energy where my bayonet is on a shelf in my bedroom. I have a bit of a shrine to family in my bedroom, as you would say. Pictures of my grandfather when he was young, pictures of my grandmother and I, my grandfather's bayonet, and all his service information. So there's a bit of a eclectic shrine there, and it's very, very peaceful corner of my room. It's kind of my I don't. I guess my place where I go to have serenity at the end of the night. At the end of the night, that's where I go to sleep, in my peaceful area, my corner. That's very non-paranormal, as opposed to the other 99% of my house. So no, that bayonet has zero activity. It gets treated with a lot of respect. So that possibly could be whatever energy, if is attached to it, is at peace, and at home, because it has been with me is forever. My grandfather passed before I was born, so I never got a chance to have a conversation with that man. But I've had the bayonet that he carried in World War II my whole life, as well as like a webbing belt that he used to wear, and it was his best friend's webbing belt in the war. He had switched belts when his friend died, so I have both of those items, and I think they're very much at peace. So. There's other things in the house that like to stir. So I don't think the bayonet really messes around, and maybe it acts as a cursor of protection. I don't know. I never really give it much thought, and I think without giving it thought or intention, probably allows it to stay at peace.
Yeah, I know. I don't bother the harmonica. I can't even believe I have something of that nature in here. Although I do have a bed in my office. It's a small bed from my great grandfather that, where at least I believe a couple people passed away on it. But I do have it. To me, it's like I have also my little mini shrine out of respect, to the point where I don't. Who knows? I've got activity going on in here periodically, but I couldn't tell you who or what it is, and some of this stuff is pretty humorous. I want to talk about the haunted objects that you may have in your house. So this is a different house than the one you grew up with, where you had seen that guy and all that. So what led you to the house that you're currently in? Was it a few?
The only thing that led me to the house I'm in is that I was in a 1-bedroom apartment as a bachelor, and I met my now wife, and we needed a 2-bedroom house, so we needed more space. So that's what we ended up with, this apartment. I had already begun my journey way before I had met my current wife. So I had not quite collected objects yet, but I was very heavily into the paranormal. I have been for over 25 years, and my wife and I have only been together for 5. So it gives you a context of I was in it way before she came along, and it was because of the paranormal that brought us together. But I started to collect objects when we moved into this house, because I started getting involved more and more in my journey, as instead of a hobby, as more of, I can't even say a profession, I say an obsession, more of an obsession than a hobby. And some of the objects started to come in after we started my friend Justin and I started a podcast called Elements of the Unknown. That's when the objects started coming in. That's when people started giving us objects. And it's very true that if an object is very haunted and somebody that has this object and doesn't want to be bothered with it, they're not going to try to sell it to you. They're going to try to give it to you. They want to get rid of it. And that's what's happened, is people have started will you take this object? Yes, we'll take it. It's a safe haven. Not many of those objects have given us any issues whatsoever, let alone activity at all. I have a doll named Robin. She has given very little activity, but she's given some. And she's been in the house. I've heard her voice twice. She's a small child. We've done some spirit box sessions with her to learn who she is, and she's called the dog's name a couple times without knowing the dog's name. She did that the first day she was here. But she seems to warn us if there's going to be other activity in the house. So a night before a very terrifying experience, I heard her say, "Hey there," and right as I was getting ready to go to sleep. And then 2 nights later, I had a very terrifying story, which I'm willing to share with you, happened after we came home from the Hinsdale house in New York there. So, and that involves an object that we have from the Hinsdale house as well. So there is some attachments to the objects. There is a little bit of activity. There's also activity from the house itself. There's an energy here that was here before I was here. And I've had psychic mediums come in and tell us that there's an old energy here, and the area of Whippy that I'm in as I was saying, much like Oshawa, is native energy, native land, and stuff that we all live on. So it's very possible that is here. The town of Whitby is very old. They used to do hangings in the town in 1800s and stuff. So, and that building where they did the hangings is like 3 blocks away from my house. So this whole area is rich with history. So there's a melting pot when you start bringing stuff in and on top of stuff that's already here.
So my question would be, let's you're going to mention some of the stories. Robin's very fascinating to me because I know what people are thinking right now. You probably know what they're thinking right now. Are you sure that's a little girl? Are you sure it's not a trickster? Are you sure it's not a demon? Are you sure it's not this? Are you sure it's not that? See, and I can vouch for. By the way, just to add to the Robin story a little bit, I photographed in my great-grandparents' home 2 apparition images. One was a little girl, one was an older man. They were both looking at me. A tornado had ripped through the property the day before. It was electrified. It was on limestone, the whole 10 yards, trees falling down, all that sort of thing. And that's when I learned I was telepathic. I went back after I realized that something was staring at me through the window after photographing this and developing my film. People always have questioned me whether that was really the little girl or whether it was a trickster or something of that sort. But I also know that the telepathic message that came to me was telling me the genealogy was wrong and they were correct. I had her name wrong and then I corrected it because I now understood who I was looking at and who was probably with her. And so I always have people question me about, are you sure that was a little girl? Are you sure it wasn't, luring back to you? Yes, I was always lured back to the property. A lot, actually. So how do you know that what you're dealing with is a little girl?
Okay, so a lot of my theories have evolved over time. I've been down the path where everything was a demon, and be very careful where you go and make sure you're protected. Don't do things unless you know what you're doing. Demonic attachment is very easy to get, and all this different things. And as I evolved into, I don't want to say it's like a leveling, but it's just more open-minded theories and open-minded thinking, and questioning things. I began to realize that a lot of things get misunderstood. And yes, there is always the possibility that I am being tricked by the demon. There's always that percentage chance. Sure, absolutely. I won't discredit it. But when I was given this doll, the person told me, this doll I have to give you is very bad. It does very bad things. It causes very bad activity. It's very negative. I can't have it around. It's a bad item. I need to get rid of it. So I said, yeah, sure, I'll take it. So when we brought it in and we set it in the house, and she was very apprehensive about me even unbagging this doll. Mm-hmm. And I sat it down on a chair and I just started addressing it and had the spirit box running. And I heard, well, what's your name? Robin. How old are you? 3. And then she goes, Scout. And I said, nobody said Scout. That's my dog. Why are you saying Scout? And she said Scout a few times. And then I start to think, I said, if I was a 3-year-old girl and somebody told me I was bad all the time, I'd probably act out. Mm-hmm. So we've never told Robin that she's bad. We've never done anything but treat her like a 3-year-old girl. And she does not provide us with any activity other than to warn us when other activity is about to happen. Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's why I don't believe that Robin is anything bad or evil or a demon or anything. I believe she's quite literally a spirit, and she's very content with being here. We have her stored in a way that there is protection to protect her from anything else. I'm not trying to protect myself from her. I'm trying to protect her from the environment around her, and that seems to keep her settled. Mm-hmm. That's why I think if it was a demon, I think we would have different activity. in the house.
Do you think, I know people are going to say this, it's popping into my head, so I'm going to just ask it or say it anyway. Do you think that it could possibly be waiting to earn your trust to a point where you become vulnerable and then it might turn around and change? I'm going to give you just a simple example.
Yep.
So, I live a haunted life. This is not anything new to anyone who knows me. I do live a haunted life. I have things coming to me all the time from different places. I'm in my 5th house now. I wanted to prove the theory that the house was haunted, or I was bringing in the hauntings, not, so I built my 5th house as a brand new build from the ground up, literally, unless it came and something was attached to the wood or something. Anyway, in house number 2, there was do you remember the movie or the show on TV? I don't know if they ever played it in Canada. It was called The Ghost and Mrs. Muir or something like that, or The Ghost of Mrs. Muir or something like that. And it was like this guy, I believe it was a guy who had a female ghost woman that literally resided with him in a friendly like way in his house. And so in house number 2, things were happening where I came to recognize that there was definitely an energy in our house, but I wasn't quite sure. So one day I was in the bedroom framing some artwork, and then I had my the spirit box on, and it was going, "Oh, artwork." I said, "Yes." And it said, "Pretty artwork." I said, "Yes, it's very beautiful. I'm framing it, and I'm going to put it on the wall." And so it was a very friendly interaction with me. And then what happened was I discovered that whatever it was liked to sleep between myself and my husband. And there's a picture on one of my books. I've got 12 of them, but on one of my books where it looks like something is choking me. And that was that essence or that spirit or something else that came in also. And I woke up literally 3 nights in a row. It wasn't sleep apnea or anything like that. I literally was being choked to death. It was almost like it was waiting for me to become very vulnerable or very peaceful, and then it attacked or something like that. And so I don't know. I'm just a little concerned, but I just know that you're around this so much that your instincts would shift and know if something seemed off. Do you follow what I'm saying?
I do follow what you're saying, and I do have other experiences in the house that are drastically different than things dealing with Robin. Mm-hmm. There's always an air of caution with dealing with Robin that, yes, things are not always what they seem, or things can be misperceived. Mm-hmm. There's examples of that. There's other things out there and other documentaries that show that things can be misperceived. There's I won't put too much naming into other things, but there is a show that's out there, if you know how to look for it, that where somebody believed a witch was attached to something, and it ends up being a god looking for help to be released because the god is binded to an object and it didn't want to be binded. Mm-hmm. So there's stuff like that. It can be misconception. Oh, you think it's something evil and it's not, or you think it's not and it is. I know that there's this whole blur of confusion. Mm-hmm. But the outside of the box thinking of me also says, if I take religion and everything that encompasses religion out of the equation, what does that become? Is it now a demon, or is it just a negative energy? And if it's dealing with just a negative energy, what kind of mind and energy can I use to control that energy or to shift that energy? And if it has become an egregore in any way, I can probably control that egregore of negativity and turn it into an egregore and teach it how to be positive. Mm-hmm. So, and that's why I have the confidence in myself to understand that even if I'm dealing with something bad or evil or whatever you want to name it, that I have the ability to have some semblance of control in myself to fix the situation. But I also have the intelligence to know if I can't handle something, I'm going to reach out to somebody that can help me, whether it be somebody of clergy in the cloth or somebody with more knowledge in objects or something. There's always a correct path, and you just got to find it. And the patience of observing curiosity over fear is something that I've always stuck with. If you want to hear the object story that Robin was about, so before we went to the Hinsdale house in late 2024, I had commissioned somebody to make me a music box sensor, and they made it out of the wood from the Hinsdale house. So I have a box that's in the shape of a coffin, and all the wood is from the outside siding of the Hinsdale house. Okay. I took that box with me when we went to the Hinsdale house overnight, and we had a whole bunch of experiences. The Hinsdale house itself is a story in itself that I have written about of our experiences there. But I take the box, I bring it home, and I leave the box in my bedroom with me. It wasn't a conscious decision. It was just, that's where I put it when I came home. And it's there. A few nights later, I had explained, I heard Robin, and she said, "Hey there." And I was almost asleep, and I went, "Was that a little girl's voice? I think I just heard Robin." And I didn't know why, but I just, okay, we'll go back to sleep. And a couple nights later, I wake up. It's about 10 after 3 in the morning, and we have a night light outside of the bedroom so we can see to go to the bathroom. And I notice as soon as I wake up, the light from the night light starts fading and fading and fading to the point that the room goes so dark I can't even see the hand in front of me. Then I feel something put almost like 4 legs on top of the bed, like they're crawling onto the bed from the bottom of the bed, moving up towards me. And I could feel the bed crushing down to the floor. And it's looming over me, and I'm trying to yell out, and I only make one little sound, like a ah. And as soon as I make that sound, I hear the light bulb, like a light bulb clicking, that that sound. That light bulb clicked, the night light came back on, the room flooded with light, and whatever was there was gone, and the bed was fine. And I remember being absolutely terrified of what had entered my room, because it had never happened before. And when I got up in the morning, I moved the music box, the Hinsdale music box. I moved it to the area where we put most of our haunted objects, because there's a lot of things around the haunted objects to kind of ground them and protect the areas and stuff. So I moved it there and never had that experience again. But what I did was I did a little more talking to people that were more versed with the Hinsdale house. And so I talked to Nick and Tessa Groff, and I explained what had happened to me, and they immediately, Nick was like, "That's the house. That's the house. It followed you home. That house followed you home." And Tessa goes, "It sounds to me like the little girl warned you it was going to happen."
Yeah. Every time she says, "Hey there," it's almost like it's a warning. Like, I mean, she's not going to scream out, "Uh-oh," or "be careful," or anything like that. Her warning to you are the words, "Hey there," which is very, very interesting. By the way, for a moment, you brought me back to another flashback. But in a different sense, I was in, I think it was Wales. It was a night after I had the most terrifying time of my life. I mean, I'm not kidding. I stopped ghost searching for 3 years after that one, but the day after I had a similar event. But we were on a property where the gentleman who used to live there was a hunter, and he buried 80 hunting dogs on the property. And the place was very haunted, but we were in the back room, and I'm always bummed because I always feel like when I'm in a different location compared to where I think I should be, I'm not going to have an experience, where in essence I always have an experience. And I had that crawling feeling on the bed, but it did feel like, to me, like, a dog with all fours kind of cautiously getting up on the bed and then crawling toward toward me. I have a sketch of that one in one of my books on how that played out. And and I started kicking. I just like, get off the bed, get off of me, get off, and so and it disappeared. But in that particular case, though, I'm pretty much sure that was a hunting dog that was curious. I tracked animals and small children to me all the time. I'm a starseed. I understand this of myself. It's been proven time and time again. It doesn't surprise me that a dog would have been curious. Animals love me, especially dogs. But in your case, though, what do you think that was crawling on top of you?
I don't know, and I'm almost thankful that the room was so dark I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Because I think that the feeling I got of fear and dread and not being able to move, and I've gone down the idea of sleep paralysis that I've never had before in my life.
Yeah.
But I know it's possible to have it once or twice in your life and that's it.
Yeah.
But on down the theory that, you know what, you could probably explain it with sleep paralysis, sure. But that energy or entity or whatever that was, I feel like it was so big that it probably encompassed the entire room with its darkness and its size. That's why the bed, I mean, like, it literally felt like the bed was turning into a pancake. Like I was sinking into the floor. It was crushed. It was crazy to feel the extremities of these legs pushing the bed down over top of me. It's like I couldn't quite feel like the breath of it, but it was like you feel like you're about to feel the breath of whatever looming over you. It was terrifying, and I just wanted to get away from it and make a sound, or I felt like if I could gain my speech, I could use words of intention to protect myself somehow. Be it call out to Archangel Michael or call out to some higher power or something to help me in my protection in this moment. And I couldn't get anything out, just a little sound out of my throat. It was enough. It was enough to get rid of it. But man, I have no idea whether it was some kind of beast or dog or...
Tell us a little bit about the backstory, because I forgot what it was, and I'm sure others are curious too. What is the backstory of the Hinsdale house?
So the Hinsdale house is a house that's just south of Buffalo. It's about 45 minutes south to an hour south of Buffalo. It's on a very old piece of land. It's like a halfway house. So halfway house being it's halfway between towns. It was the journey between towns was so long they needed to have a house halfway to stop overnight. And this house was built on native land where thousands of natives had died in battle on the land. And then the house was built there. And then there was brothers who were killing people, stopping at the halfway house. And later on, there's Clara. She writes a book about her experiences living in the house and the dandies and stuff. And that house is like one of the only houses in the United States that had an exorcism done on the house that failed. So it's a failed exorcism on the house, and the house is so active with activity. The grounds are so active with activity that it as well is just a whole whack load of stuff going on there. There's cryptid sightings in the woods around it. There's spirits on the grounds. There's spirits in the house. I saw a spirit of a cat walking by in the living room. We heard footsteps in the staircases. Multiple celebrities and people have filmed shows for TV and YouTubes, and all the different streaming services have been in this house to film their segments and stuff. So it's become a very notoriously known house, but there's a lot of air of mystery behind it as well that's still being discovered and documented. And it's probably I've been to a lot of places. It's one of the most scary places I've been to. I don't think I slept more than 30 minutes at a time when I was sleeping there. It was incredible, the feelings that you get. None of us slept upstairs. We were too scared to sleep upstairs. So we all piled into the living room, and then found out the living room could be worse than the upstairs.
Of course.
no safe corner.
So they allowed, do they still allow people to investigate and stay overnight there?
Yeah, you can go to the Hinsdale House website and book an overnight investigation there all through the week and weekends. The weekends book up fast. They go on sale early in the year, and the whole year is usually booked out for weekends. But you can get a weekday overnight, and they do other kinds of events and stuff there. I think some people rent it out and host an event. Dan does all kinds of stuff to help restore the house and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it's a very active location that anybody can go to, and I would highly recommend.
Was there a family, of course, that lived there that were experiencing all these things? And are the artifacts of that family still there? Or did they just bring in other artifacts to kind of just make it more of the period?
The family that lived there, they had a ton of experiences they wrote about. There's a book. I'm trying to think of the name of the book. I have it locally close to me somewhere. The Hinsdale House. Dan Class has his own book as well that he wrote. So you can find that online, his book and Clara's book about her case. My wife read Clara's book before we went. She said she almost wishes she didn't read it before she went because it kind of changed the atmosphere in her mind a bit.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how much of the furniture and stuff in there is original to the house. That would be something that Dan would know. Mm-hmm. But it is fully set up and fully functional. So you stay overnight, you have electricity, you have heat, you have access to like fridge, stove, all that different stuff. So running shower, bathrooms, all the amenities and bedrooms and beds and the living rooms all set up. You could in theory move into the house and live there, but nobody's doing that. So
I don't think so. Probably wouldn't be a good idea anyway, judging from that area and everything. So you still have, I presume the answer is yes. Do you still have that, the Hinsdale coffin?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And has it acted up very much anymore?
No, I have it stored with the rest of the objects. It's on display in my living room. Mm-hmm. But it has not given me any further activity since it's been moved. So I don't put it in my room anymore.
Yeah, I probably not. Yeah. What do you have other objects in there that also do interesting things in your house?
Like I said, most of the objects that we've been given don't give us much activity at all. We have a marionette doll that was hand carved. But it has done nothing since we've had it. I have objects that I've collected that have significance to haunted histories as well, but they don't have any activity giving us. So, like a Crying Boy painting and the history of the Crying Boy painting. I have a Crying Boy painting. It's never given me activity, and thank God, God willing, it has not burnt my house down.
Yeah.
I have a doll of Emmett Smith, the original hobo clown, and Emmett's story of him being haunted and tortured by a demon that forced him to be this clown, this hobo sad clown. So I have a doll towards that history, and dolls coming. I had a doll from upstate New York that was pulled out of a house. It's an old doll. Sorry, I'm looking around because there's all kinds of stuff, but nothing really gives us too much activity. The only other puzzle that's kind of in the middle of its journey right now is we were gifted a Ouija board. And I was
just thinking that.
People are going to say, oh, a Ouija board. Of course, it's a Ouija board and all the things that come with it. And how do you consider it a haunted object? I have multiple boards in the house. I don't have a problem collecting the boards. But this one specific board was given to us and told, which everybody says the board's bad and did things. And I was a bit dismissive on it. And I said, yeah, we'll take the board. It's fine. And I went to use the board on an investigation. We took it with us somewhere. And the board started to give us these answers to the questions that we were giving. But the answers and what it was telling us had nothing to do with the location that we were in. And I started to realize that the board is talking to us because there is something attached to the board. And we're talking to whatever that attachment is. That's why these answers don't make sense to the location. So we had to note all the information and what it was giving us. And the reason why I say we're in the middle of that journey is because we're still researching. we're still trying to figure out what's going on, what's attached, why it's attached, what do the messages mean. In the second book I have coming, you will actually be able to see when we talk about that. I have left some of the messages in the book so people can see what was written. And who knows, maybe somebody can take part in helping us understand what is going on with this board, or maybe they know a little piece of history that we don't know. So that's part of living in this world, is sometimes you're always on the case of a mystery to try to solve, and it's part of the intrigue with it as well. There's things, sometimes it's hard to tell if an object is giving you activity or whether it's the energy that was already in the house. So I've been scratched while I was in the shower, and that was before we even go there. It was before Robin was in the house, so it wasn't Robin. But I've been scratched, but I was like, I didn't touch myself on my back of my leg when I was in the shower. I was washing my hair, and when I don't have much hair now, but I got scratched. I felt the burning on my leg. I know what that feeling is, and I look, and sure enough, I've got a couple scratches on my leg, but I don't know what that's from. I don't know. Is it the energy that's here? Is it an object? Is it something just trying to get my attention? I'm not sure. We do see shadow figures in the house all the time. Most people see shadow figures kind of out of the corner of your eye. Ours has graduated to, when you're looking straight on, it'll just poke itself right out in front of you, like totally brave, and comes right out. To the point where my wife was home alone while I was at work one night, and she was laying on the couch, and she said the shadow figure came around the corner from the hallway, and she watched it straight on walk right up to her and lean right over her on the couch before it disappeared. Like, zero fear. Most shadow figures are darting and trying to like dart in and out. Not this one in the house. And we find if there's negativity in the household, it becomes more active. So we're not very negative people, so we don't get a lot of activity, but sometimes people fight, right? So that's when it ramps up, and we just combat it with positive intentions and stuff.
Scratch. I was going to ask you about that scratch. Was it pretty embedded? Did it bleed?
It left two, I believe it was two. I don't know if it was three. It might have been three red marks. They didn't quite bleed. They just they had that raised feeling that you get when you're scratched, but it didn't draw blood at all.
Okay.
And I know the initial thing for most people is to think, oh, that's demonic attachment, or that's you're being marked, or or any kind of bad. And I go, well, what if something was trying to get my attention, and it doesn't know how to properly get my attention, and maybe it's just trying to touch me, and the physical sensation of touching me causes more hurt than it realizes it's going to do. It could be, I really try to rationalize multiple angles. And when I can't, that's the advantage of my wife as well, is that she will rationalize thinking as well with me. Like we were at Rolling Hills and in New York, and I seen way down the end of a hallway that's dark, and there's blue windows at the end, and I see somebody walk past the windows, but it's so far away. And I got excited because I think I'm seeing a spirit walk past the windows. And she says, have you stopped to think about the narrowing effect of seeing in the dark, and the fact that light is blue? It could just be a trick of the light, because you're staring into a long, dark area with no light, and your eyes could be playing tricks on you with movement of light. And I thought, she's right. It could be that, but it could also be what I experienced. But the thing is, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both at the exact same time. One person can have an experience while the other person does not.
Correct.
And you can both agree with the situations. So
Correct.
I try to inject that thinking into everything that happens within our house. And it doesn't, I sometimes say, like, it doesn't have to be like, I'm not saying like you have to be fighting, but like sometimes if you're just being negative for a couple of days, complaining about stuff for, you find yourself, why am I complaining about everything for the last few days? That's enough to teach an energy how to ramp up, and energies learn. So, and I think that there's very much stuff about the universe and the energies that we don't comprehend or understand, but it happens, and one day we might understand. But it lends into theories about maybe ghosts have to interact with living energy that we produce, and we are the ghost machines that are providing the added recipe needed to create activity. And I don't really understand how that works. Maybe nobody does right now, but maybe we will eventually. And
any capture surprise for you?
Yeah, I mean, I can think of a few stories already, but one that people can read more in depth about when you pick up my book. We were at Hillview Manor, and we decided we want to stop at Hillview Manor. We had, of course, seen it on various shows. Destination Fear did a segment where Alex was in a solo in the certain hallway on the second floor, and he ended up vomiting on the floor.
Oh, God.
And because of whatever energy was there, and he got overcome. And we thought, man, we got to go to Hillview Manor. We got to see. I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. We got to go down that hallway and just sit. So Hillview is great. They take you on a tour. They give you a whole bunch of haunted history. They give you a really in-depth tour, and then they just let you go roam free and investigate the place for a while. So we ran right to that second floor hallway, and we're sitting side by side on chairs in the hallway. We decided we're not running any equipment. I'm gonna put a REM pod at the end of the hallway, so if we know if anything comes into the hallway, and we're just gonna sit in the dark, and we're gonna see if we can see the shadows moving in the hallway or anything. And we were only there for a few minutes, and there's a doorway to the right of Dominic, and something pokes out of the bedroom into the hallway and looks right at her, and then goes back in, and she jumps out of the chair. And there's that theory that if one person says run, everybody runs.
Yeah.
So he jumps out of the chair, and I'm like, what? And I jump out of my chair, and she's like, something just came out of that room and looked at me. And I'm like, what? And now my instinct as an investigator is I'm running in that room and I'm going to find out. So I run into that room, and there's nothing in there, and there's no way that light could have tricked her into a shadow or anything like that. She said, no, something came out of that, poked out and looked at me and went back in. And as soon as I came out of the bedroom, I pulled up my phone to start recording to see if maybe something more would happen so we could catch it on video. And I felt a wave of fear come over me, but I didn't identify it as fear first. I started to panic, almost like in a panic attack. And I said, we need to leave. We need to leave right now. And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't even want to continue doing this in building. I want to leave Hillview. And she's like, what? So she's trying to ground me. And she says, let's go for a walk towards the entrance and see how you feel when you get close to outside, and we'll take a breather. And no sooner did I get out of the hallway that we were in, it was like a blanket came off of me and the fear was gone. And she had said to me, were you afraid? Was that fear? And I went, holy cow, I think you're right. It was backed with anxiety and panic, but I think I had gotten hit with fear, and I hadn't been hit with it in a long time. But I definitely experienced it because of this moment of whatever she had seen coming out, and there was a panic in the atmosphere, and it just spiraled, and something fed on it. The only other instance where I kind of was like, whoa, taken aback, there's a location here close to me. It's a cemetery, and I know most people say, oh yes, not all cemeteries are haunted. This one is notorious for a haunting. It has a church old church on the property as well. And I use it kind of as like a training ground. So I'm so familiar with it that if I just need to test out equipment, or I need to, somebody new wants to get involved in the paranormal, that's where we go. It's an environment I'm very familiar with, and I know when to get out of that environment, and I know when it's okay to be there. So I'm there, and I'm looking at the church, but I'm looking to the left, and there's 3 windows on the church that go side by side, and somebody snaps a picture of me looking at the building. I'm looking left, but in the window to my right, looking down on me, is a robed figure with a deer skull head. And at first I thought, when I saw this picture, I absolutely panicked, because I've never experienced anything like this at this cemetery. And early me thought, oh, this is something very evil and very demonic looking, and I should be very careful about going back to this location. And even in hindsight of what I think it is now, I still say be careful. But I don't think it's something demonic. I think what was captured in film was actually a Wendigo in the window. I think there was a reflection of a Wendigo looking at me. And apparently that's not good either.
Oh, not a Wendigo.
So the fortunate part is I didn't physically see the Wendigo. It was a reflection captured in a picture. So the person that took the picture, nothing bad has happened to them as far as I know either. So, but it was very unsettling for a very long time. Every time I look at that picture to think of the possibility and how close that was to me in proximity.
Were you able to get into that church? Were you able to get in there and go into, or is it locked up?
Yeah, that building's locked up. It's kind of like the door's locked, and then they have like an iron rod gate that's padlocked over top of it so that nobody can break stuff. It is kind of secluded out of town, so it's kind of north of town. So not a lot of you're not going to get kids wandering around there or anything. So the most that happens there is, I mean, it's still an active cemetery, so it has a very old section and a very new section. So they still actively use it as that. And a lot of ghost hunters and investigators will show up there, especially through the summer, to equipment and look for ghosts and stuff. So there's stories of things being seen around the cemetery, apparitions and shadow men behind the trees and stuff like that. So it's the active spot.
It's interesting. And I mean, air to caution for those of you listening to us tonight. Always air to caution if you decide to go out investigating, and always do it in pairs at the minimum. Don't just run out by yourself, because there's more than just getting, I don't know, not necessarily attacked by something you can't see, but you could fall down someplace, you could break your leg, you could get into some poison ivy, you can all kinds of things can happen to you when you're running around. Tell everyone how they can get your books and where they can find you.
So you can pick up my book on Amazon, and in the States you can actually get it on Barnes & Noble's website as well. The book is called Stories from Beyond the Unknown, but if you just search Jason McGray on Amazon or Barnes & Noble, it'll come up. That's where the second book will come as well, which is Exploring the Unknown. So my first book is I'm as much of experience and insights and stuff from me. It also a collection of stories that I've collected from people all over North America. And there is some features like Josh Purvis gave me a story, and Dan Class gave me a story, and a few other people that are within the community that have given me feature stories as well. So you'll get to see all kinds of stuff. There's an incredible story by a guy named Ron who lives in Merrill, Michigan. His story is absolutely incredible about how he died and came back and his attachments that came with it. It's a phenomenal, deep feeling story. So I highly recommend it. On the socials, obviously, you can find me on Facebook, Jason McGray. Just look for the blue check mark. And Instagram, I'm there as well. Instagram, I believe I'm para.jasonmcgray. But you just search for my name. You can find me. If you look up my name and you see a fishing boat, that's my cousin in Nova Scotia. That's not me.
Oh, jeez. All of a sudden your cousin now is going to get flooded with, hey, want to be interviewed? Oh, I'd love to talk to you about my fish.
About lobster fishing.
Exactly. I love that, Well, again, this has been a really great interview, and I'll be in touch with you. And again, thank you so very much for being on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been fun.